fourth episode of the Voices of Rondo Youth Council podcast. My name is Erica, and I'm here with my fellow hosts.
Hello, everyone. My name is Moises.
My name is Javier Soto.
So in this episode, we'll be talking about the gentrification in the Rondo neighborhood, as well as in the Treme neighborhood of New Orleans. So, like Rondo, Treme is a historically black community that has also been split by an interstate. And within that, we're going to discuss what the neighborhood of Treme is doing to revitalize their community, specifically highlighting a nonprofit founded in 2017, the Claiborne Avenue Alliance, who is fighting to remove that section of the highway, Interstate 10 in Treme, and replace it with the avenue that was once there. So with that, we can move into the content now.
So, what is gentrification?
Well, gentrification is defined as removing living spaces for disenfranchised people. And originally, the term was coined in London in the 1960s. I have no clue by who,
right,
but it's just where it comes from.
So I feel like we've talked a lot about gentrification in this podcast series, and we've really used the word a lot, but just to like really hone in on it and understand what it means, it's like you said, it's when an economically poorer area sees an influx of wealthy people, businesses and companies coming into their neighborhood, buying up land, raising the cost of living, cutting funding from pre-existing opportunities, which all subsequently drives out the original peoples of that community. And so how exactly has gentrification played out in Rondo? Because that's a very real reality. So we're going to show y'all a clip of an interview we did with the mayor of Brooklyn Center, Mayor April Graves. She's from the Rondo community, grew up in the Rondo community, and she's going to tell us how gentrification in her neighborhood has affected her. So let's roll it. Okay, so we just wanted to have a conversation with you talking about the history of Rondo and like where you see it going in the future. So like, if you don't mind, we just wanted to ask you, so where are you from and what does that mean to you?
Well, I grew up in the Rondo community on Laurel and Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
My parents bought that house before I was even born. So I spent, all of my childhood there. And actually, my mom sold that house, I think in 2015, and moved in with me in Brooklyn Center. So my family was there for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because Rondo's gone through a lot of changes. I know about the history of I-94. I wasn't around, obviously, when that happened, but I've definitely seen a lot of changes just while I was growing up there. Selby was definitely kind of a hot spot when I was in high school. I don't know that it necessarily is right now. I haven't been there in that area to know that, but, it was kind of the block, but it also was like a space where I would see a lot of my friends from school. And some of them were friends, some of them were acquaintances, but it still felt like a very vibrant neighborhood, even when there was difficulties. And the thing that I always talk about Rondo, or at least about the area that I grew up in on Laurel, is that it was sort of like at the interpass of like wealth or the haves and the have-nots, because the governor's mansion's right there on Summit. But then I also see so much struggle, so much hardship and inequality and inequity along Selby, along Marshall, and definitely on the other side of 94 and around Eaglehart and Carroll and all those streets as well. But it's still a very connected community. There's lots of places where you can go and you can feel accepted. One of my favorite places to visit is the Golden Time. And I wasn't there when I was young, but I definitely have went back and frequented it in its former location as well as the location it is in now. And so I'd like to see it revitalized. I've seen some revitalization, but there's definitely like apartment buildings that I knew had friends that stayed in that are now like condos, like on Dayton and Marshall. So I know that there's also been some gentrification that's happened over the years as well. And it's interesting to understand or to think about and try to understand the connections between Rondo and the Frogtown area, which both are like very ethnically diverse. And I've always felt like, how is it that Frogtown has been so able to thrive and have all of these, Hmong-owned businesses, and yet it's been more of a struggle to get back the Black businesses in Rondo that were there before I was born. And that seems like it's been a much slower process to try to support that coming back and being more of a vibrant part of the city. But there's still Rondo days. There used to be Selby days when I was younger as well. But I don't think that that's happened for many, many years.
Yeah, and like speaking of the revitalization of Rondo that you're talking about, what does that look like to you?
Well, I mean, being that I'm a mayor in Brooklyn Center now, I guess right away I would think about how do you support small businesses and entrepreneurs, Black small businesses and entrepreneurs specifically, to have a foothold in that community. And also, I know there's been some conversations around, the land bridge over 94. There's even some conversations around like turning 94 into something that isn't an interstate highway. I think at this point in time, that might be a little bit unrealistic to try to like turn an interstate into something other than an interstate, especially if you think about the importance of having access to businesses, which is part of how you revitalize an area so that people can come and spend their money there and then the money will be in the community. But I definitely think it's around home ownership, getting people that have had roots there and access to being able to buy homes. A lot of the reason why I'm in Brooklyn Center is because I couldn't afford to buy a home in my home area in Rondo. I was able to afford a place in Brooklyn Center that I couldn't have afforded in St. Paul in the Rondo neighborhood.
That was April Graves, the mayor of Brooklyn Center. What did you guys think about what she had to say?
Yeah, that one line about her saying that she couldn't afford a home in St. Paul and she just had to go, outside the city to Brooklyn Center to get a home. That's how you slowly get rid of a community.
That's just crazy how like in her own community, that's where she's from, that's where she grew up, and that's where all her memories are from her formative years of like, that's just crazy how she couldn't even afford to stay there. Like that's not right.
And I wonder how many more people that's happened to.
Right. That's not
she
like
was the only one.
That's not an isolated event. Like this is the reality for so many people who are from Rondo and have roots in Rondo.
And kind of to tie in, she talked about gentrification in Rondo, and I was a product of that, her not being able to buy a home. But it's happening today.
Yeah, it's happening real close too. Especially in comparison to where we are like right now.
Yeah.
Down the street, I think on Lexington, there are these apartments that are going up. They're luxury apartments. They're called the Alatus, or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think half of it is supposed to be luxury, and then the other half is supposed to be affordable housing. Is that right?
It's like mixed. Something like that.
Yeah. Maybe that's wrong. That could be not true.
No, I actually did read something about that where it's like some sections will be affordable, but it's mostly known as being all these luxury apartments getting built up.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that like affordable in like St. Paul, like affordable, or affordable as in Rondo affordable?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I think affordable housing in St. Paul is like what? 40,000, something, yep. And then Rondo is like literally half of that,
like 20,000.
Exactly.
20,000.
I'm glad you brought that up. Like exactly, like when we're like brainstorming ways to create like actual real affordable housing in Rondo, you can't look at the entirety of St. Paul because, like you said, like the area median income in Rondo is half that of St. Paul's. So you can't look at the entirety of that because economically they're two different playing fields.
Yeah, and one thing to mention, and this has to be mentioned, with those apartments, the city council. They didn't support it, right? They struck it down. But then, Mayor Carter vetoed their decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's how they're being built right now. Which is interesting, isn't it?
I just think it's really not okay how like one person can have so much power to just like undermine something that a whole entire group of people decided. That's just too much power, honestly.
That kind of makes me worried for the future of Reconnect Rondo as a whole.
Exactly.
Just like the land bridge and stuff, because I mean the plans are obviously like a huge part of that is affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And that's what's supposed to go on that land, at least part of it. But if like that doesn't really matter to the mayor, like he could just put what he wants on there.
Right. Let's discuss that a bit more. So, they built this land bridge, right? That's pretty much, as soon as that land bridge is built, that's pretty much when Reconnect Rondo's actual job ends. Yeah. And then that's when the city steps in, right? Because, Reconnect Rondo, they don't control that land. That's the city.
Right.
So we need to remind ourselves that, like, you know, Reconnect Rondo was built or was founded as a community organization. You know, Rondo elders who lived through I-94 being put through their neighborhood.
Yeah.
They founded it. And, you know, they have values of building affordable housing without gentrification.
Right.
You know, it's in there, right?
Displacement. Right.
That's the vision, right?
Right.
But the actual, like, result could be different because of the city. And we've seen signs of that, as we just said.
So in 2019, Macalester College, in partnership with Reconnect Rondo, conducted a study of gentrification in Rondo and offered several different strategies to avoid displacement and offer affordable housing in Rondo if and or when the land bridge is built. So would you like to...
So some of them is ground lease, where pretty much a lease agreement where the city still owns the land, but a household will pretty much rent it for pretty much decades. And that creates, you know, some stability and affordability, which is important. And then there's a new term, which I didn't even know existed, inclusionary zoning, where pretty much you have affordable housing and market rate housing in the same zone. So, you know, there's not different zones with different incomes.
So you're making like a mixed income neighborhood.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, yeah. Another one of those strategies is to restrict use after sale. So that's when the city uses restrictive covenants to make it so that a property can only be sold at a certain price and can be occupied by low income families. And like many of you may know, that restrictive covenants have been historically used to prevent various BIPOC folk from buying houses in certain areas, but they can also be used in our favor too. And another one too is the government can offer local government rent subsidies to help folks pay their rent. But I'm happy too, Javi, that you mentioned, like, how do we define affordable housing? Like, is Reconnect Rondo's definition of affordable housing actually affordable to the original community members of Rondo and those that are still here and those that had to move away but plan to move back? Like, is it actually affordable to them? So that's something we really have to be looking at.
Yep, and that's something that the city needs to look at, and Reconnect Rondo needs to, you know, really tune in on that and really advocate for that, because it can't be based on St. Paul.
Right.
Thank you for watching our podcast. If you like what you see, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and click that notification bell to get notified when we put out new podcast episodes.